Today, I'd like to continue our discussion of joy and how we can discover true joy in our lives. It's good to take a look at the Buddhist and the Christian approaches to joy and see the similarities and the differences. The Dalai Lama, who represents the uh, Buddhist Tibetan tradition, tells a story about the Buddha one day. The Buddha and his monks were going to lunch with the king. Very impressive. There you are. You have this wonderful opportunity to have a nice meal with the king. You're kind of looking forward to that. A great thing. On the way, they pass a beggar. And the beggar was there smiling. And he was praising the king. So it wasn't so much that he was asking for something for himself, but when he saw them all, he was showing his admiration for the king. He was smiling at the king. He was rejoicing in the king and wishing the king well. The Buddha at the meal decides that he's going to dedicate this meal to the beggar. And everyone was a little bit shocked at that. All of the disciples of the Buddha were like, why are you dedicating this meal just to this simple beggar? Why not to the king? I mean, the king is the one who is throwing the feast. He's the one who is initiating it. He's the one who invited us. Shouldn't you be praising the king? Well, the Buddha, as he always did, used this as an opportunity to teach his disciples. He explained that the king was very proud in all that he had. He was contented. He had all these wonderful things, wonderful homes, wonderful food. He had all of the good things in life. But the beggar didn't have all of those good things. But what he had, in a way, was something more important, something more precious. What the beggar had was his ability to rejoice, and he rejoiced in the good fortune of the king. He wasn't thinking about his own situation, about what he didn't have, but he was happy. He rejoiced in what the king did have. And the Dalai Lama talks about this in terms of the fact that you can have a wonderful house, beautiful house, well constructed, luxurious. But as you sit in that wonderful house, you can be full of anger. You can be upset at something that happened, something that somebody said to you. And there you are, sitting in the midst of luxury, of finery. But what do you have? You have anger. And on the other hand, contrasting, the Dalai Lama says, well, you can sit on just a simple rock. You're out there in nature. You're sitting there on the rock, but you're peaceful. You're contemplating the beauty of nature. You're seeing the harmony within nature. You're rejoicing in that. And you're at peace. No anger. The beautiful house, the simple rock, is really not the issue. The issue is yourself and what you're feeling, what you're rejoicing in, the joy that you have found in life. A famous prayer in the Buddhist tradition is the prayer of the Panchen Lama. And the prayer of the Panchen Lama is a prayer that takes joy in the happiness of others. It's really a sense of what we've been talking about in terms of mudita. You rejoice that others are happy. You see that they're doing well, and you're just thankful. And you rejoice in that. Isn't that wonderful? This person is happy, they've accomplished a wonderful thing, they just got a new promotion. It's great. It's wonderful. That's awesome. You rejoice in the good things that happen to another person. Dalai Lama also talks about suffering in a different way. We look at suffering and we say we want to avoid suffering. Suffering is evil. Some people even will say the idea of suffering in the world really proves there is no God. I mean, because if God is good, why would he let people suffer? And so people look at suffering and say it's an awful thing. Indeed, it is terrible, but the Dalai Lama makes an interesting point about suffering. He said, suffering is what makes you really appreciate the joy. So when you're experiencing suffering, it is terrible, it is awful, but then when you have those moments of joy, you truly appreciate them. You say, wow, this is so good, this is so wonderful. Here rejoicing in the sunset. It's been raining for 2 weeks. It's been terrible, it's been awful. But today, we have a sunset. It is beautiful, it is gorgeous. We have a wonderful day. I really appreciate this day, especially after what all I've gone through. This is a beautiful day. So our appreciation is much greater when we've experienced some negatives in life, some suffering, some hardships. So, wow, this is really beautiful. I rejoice. I feel the joy. Interesting story from Auschwitz that Bishop Tutu speaks about in the Book of Joy. He speaks about Eva Eger, one of the survivors of Auschwitz. And she noticed that in her experience, those that were spoiled, those that were pampered, those that had it easy during the Holocaust, they were the first to die. They couldn't take the hardship and the deprivation. Whereas those who had experienced some rough times, some difficulties, experienced some challenges, they were able to survive much better and adapt much better to the extreme hardships of the prison camps. There is a 7-point training in Tibetan spiritual teaching. It talks about the 3 categories of people: your family members, your teachers, and your enemies. It talks about 3 objects, 3 poisons, 3 roots of virtue. The 3 poisons are attachment, anger, and delusion. And the 3 roots of virtue are non-attachment, compassion, and wisdom. And we'll spend some time in our next presentation exploring the 7-point training and what it tells us about the importance of finding joy in our lives and how to go about finding more joy.